some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, I'm Bethany Elsey. It's 2 minutes past 4. I'm in the GB newsroom. The Defence Secretary says there are no plans for the UK to send 600 special forces into Ukraine at any stage. Speaking in Moscow in the last hour, Ben Wallace says the Russian government told him they have no intention of invading their neighbour. Mr Wallace said that NATO will remain defensive but is seeking no confrontation, adding he hopes there is a way forward after today's talks.
I was clear about the tragic consequences that any invasion of Ukraine could have for all people, both Ukrainian, Russia and the security of Europe. We listened to the assurances given by Minister Shoigu and indeed General Gerasimov that they would not invade Ukraine, and we urged dialogue as a way through to address any concerns that the Russian government may have.
The Home Secretary says the next Metropolitan Police Commissioner faces stark challenges. That's as she begins the process of choosing Dame Cressida Dick's replacement. Priti Patel says the culture at the force and the behaviour of its officers needs an overhaul by a new leader. Dame Cressida announced her departure yesterday after losing the confidence of the London Mayor in the wake of a series of scandals. Former Scotland Yard detective Pleater Blexley told GB News her position was untenable.
There's lessons to be learnt here by the next incoming commissioner because, of course, Cressida Dick's refusal to investigate the Downing Street allegations in the first instance made her look like a political pawn. Whether she was or not is irrelevant. That was the perception that so many people had. Policing and politics needs to be kept apart as much as it possibly can because when police do politics, they get it wrong.
The Labour MP Neil Coyle has said the party whip suspended after allegedly making racist comments to a journalist. The Bermondsey and Old Southwark MP is accused of using offensive language towards British Chinese reporter Henry Dyer in a bar in the House of Commons. Neil Coyle has apologised to everyone involved. The UK economy grew by a record 7.5% in 2021, following a large fall the year before due to the pandemic. Official figures show GDP grew by 1% in the final quarter last year, despite the impact of the Omicron variant in December. But economists are warning inflation and tax rises could dampen confidence in the coming months. All COVID restrictions in Wales could be lifted by the end of March. That's according to the Welsh Economy Minister. Vaughan Gething has given a briefing on the changes in place of First Minister Mark Drakeford, who's self-isolating after testing positive for COVID. COVID passes will end next week and face masks will no longer be required in museums or cinemas from the end of the month. Spain has dropped its entry requirement for British children over the age of 12 to be fully vaccinated. They'll now only have to show proof of a recent negative COVID test. Meanwhile, fully vaccinated passengers will no longer need to take a test when arriving back in the UK. The cost of diesel has spiked, leading to fears that businesses will further increase prices for customers. The AA says the average price of a litre of fuel hit 151.21 pence and that this latest jump increases pressure on inflation. Exports of Scotch whisky rose by almost a fifth last year to more than £4.5 billion. They were helped by the end of US tariffs, which were imposed by former President Donald Trump. The Scotch Whisky Association says the main driver was a 71% increase in demand from Latin America, but exports are still 8% down on pre-pandemic levels. And koalas have officially been listed as endangered along much of Australia's east coast. Their population has fallen around 30% compared with 3 years ago due to droughts, bushfires and land clearing. The Australian Koala Foundation estimates there are fewer than 58,000 koalas left in the country. On TV, on radio and online, this is GB News. We'll bring more as it happens in half an hour.
Approaching 5 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on your digital radio. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's former Liberal Democrat MP Cressida Dick and also political commentator Emma Webb. Right, let's get started. My God, there's so much going on in the news. It was actually difficult to determine which bit to talk about. So I decided to find the thing that irritated me the most. It always sticks in my craw when ex-prime ministers have the audacity to pop their heads above the parapet to criticise current leaders when they themselves have made a mess of things when they were in power. One name springs to mind in particular, warmonger Sir Tony Blair, who doesn't appear to be flushable. He had the nerve to give advice on the mess that is Afghanistan, which you could argue he had a hand in creating after his nation-building project with George Bush went badly wrong. But even more irritating is when the criticism comes from ex-leaders from the same party who take the moral high ground when they themselves are in no position to pass judgment and when they clearly have an axe to grind. A recent offender, Theresa May, who thought that fox hunting on her manifesto was a vote winner. She squandered her majority and made such a hash of her withdrawal agreement that even she couldn't get any takers. There's no love lost between her and Boris, who then superseded her to win an unheard of 80-seat majority. And now, the latest turncoat, ex-Prime Minister Sir John Major, who had the gall to preach about morality. He said, "Lack of trust is ruining our reputation." Well, I mean, he should know about the damage breaching trust can have after he was found to be cheating on his wife and having an affair with Edwina Currie. Here he is pontificating now.
Day after day, the public was asked to believe the unbelievable. Ministers were sent out to defend the indefensible, making themselves look gullible or foolish as they did so. Collectively, this has made the government look distinctly shifty, which has consequences that go far beyond political unpopularity.
Oh, please. He said that Boris Johnson has misled the public. He spoke of Boris's, I quote, brazen excuses and unbelievable claims. Can you imagine the intricate framework of brazen excuses, unbelievable claims and lies that he would have had to tell his wife to have that affair, to keep it top secret? And there he is, preaching about morality. Don't make me laugh. He went on about how the UK's reputation was being shredded abroad. Well, that's no thanks to him and some of the reporting by the mainstream media, I might add, who continue to distort the facts about Partygate, milking the scandal. The other day, I heard a caller on one media outlet. He was explaining how the French saw the UK, and he started by mentioning the party that Boris had the night before Prince Philip's funeral. Only Boris wasn't there. The broadcaster, who's an ardent Remainer, I won't say who he is, did not correct the caller, despite knowing full well that Boris wasn't at the party, and it was clearly, by all accounts, done behind his back as he was with his family. John Major uses words that describe the government as shifty and that we should be wary. He talks about a weaker nation. He should know about weakness. Perhaps he should think about the damage he, as an ex-Prime Minister, is doing to the UK abroad by speaking about his own party in this way. It's just bad form. Look, a bit of research would tell you that Boris Johnson and John Major have some 30 years of history and that John tried to block Boris Johnson becoming a Tory MEP because Boris, who was a journalist at the time, had written some Eurosceptic columns. I mean, what is it with these people? Do they think that we've forgotten their own behaviour in office? It's incredible that they expect to be taken seriously. Frankly, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Each Friday at 5, we'll put the spotlight on a particular guest or subject matter in my feature Friday Focus. You try saying that. This week, I'm joined by two people who have very different views on a new report suggesting that red tape and continued disruption at the borders is strongly reducing the UK's ability to trade with the EU. The great British debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK be funding the French response to the migrant crisis? France is set to build a CCTV network to stop migrants and catch smugglers through number plate recognition on vehicles. But the cameras will be funded by £54 million from the UK government, and we won't have access to them. So should the UK be funding the French response to the migrant crisis? And after 5, we'll look at what comes next for the Met Police as their commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, steps down, saying she's been left with no choice after the London mayor made it clear that he had no confidence in her leadership. Let's get a quick update now with our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's outside the Home Office this afternoon.
Well, here in Marsham Street, the Home Secretary has confirmed that she has now begun formally the process of trying to find a new Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Priti Patel said that any replacement for Cressida Dick would have to show strong and decisive leadership to deal with the institutional issues that have plagued the Metropolitan Police in recent years. It is, of course, as well, the most political of policing roles, having to straddle the twin demands of a Labour London mayor and a Conservative Home Secretary. It was a spate of recent scandals, claims of institutionalised misogyny, of racist and homophobic behaviour that did for Cressida Dick, with the London Mayor Sadiq Khan saying he no longer had confidence in Cressida Dick as the person to institutional or to bring around the reforms that would try to improve the behaviour within the Metropolitan Police. But the new person in that job is unlikely to be in the post long themselves when, like every other Met Commissioner before them, they will face their own fresh set of controversies.
Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's outside the Home Office this afternoon. More on that story after 5 o'clock. That's coming up in the next hour. So tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or why not tweet us at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome to my panel, political commentator Emma Webb, and also, this is the other way around, but it's okay, and former Liberal Democrat
She doesn't
MP.
look like me.
I was going to say, I mean, it's not quite right, is it? And of course, former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Right, so let's get started. Let's talk about this, you two. I mean, look, a former Prime Minister coming in, opening his mouth in that manner, when he himself, well, I mean, he's not really got a good record on trust. I mean, Emma, what do you think?
Well, especially given that he was Prime Minister during the Tory sleaze scandal with the whole cash for questions scandal. But also, I think, it's not that long since we saw Lord Heseltine talking about how he believed that ousting Boris was going to possibly lead to a turnaround in Brexit. And I think that this is clearly and in a deeply ironic way, a cynical move from him. I think he thinks that attacking the Prime Minister is, we know that John Major is an insistent Ramona. That this is just this is just a very cynical move on his part, and I think that it's extremely ironic because actually it's quite sleazy of him to be so sort of cynical and strategic in this way. I think that you're absolutely right. I think that he's hugely hypocritical. And actually, if anything, John Major himself is a reminder that the public's memory for these sorts of things is very, very short indeed. Who even knows who John Major is really these days? Who remembers the Cash for Questions scandal? The idea that this is going to be particularly damaging to the Conservative Party or to democracy long term, I think, seems like a cheap shot.
Well, it's embarrassing, frankly, and he should keep his mouth shut. I mean, he's not got the best track record. He was literally the dullest Prime Minister in the world. But, I mean, what do you think?
Well, both moaners about Major.
You like him?
Yes.
You think what he did, him speaking out, is the right thing to do?
Yes.
Why?
Because he's been there, he made the mistakes, he's more qualified than anybody else I know to warn Boris that he's making a mistake.
He wasn't warning him, though, was it? And warning is when you care about the person, you're warning them because you're concerned something bad might happen. Look, Lambert, I'm worried about you. I'm going to warn you about something. This was not a warning. This was an absolute insult. And it's also damaging to his own party.
I just think you're both off beam here. Let me tell you, I've never been a member of the Conservative Party, and...
We know. You're only trying to stay with the Liberal Democrats.
Well, have I? Anyway, when it comes down to it, enough of that.
I like Emma.
I like Emma too, but I think you're wrong. You're moaning about Major. The thing is, I've got no reason to defend John Major apart from these 2 points. Number one, he's been there, he's made mistakes. I think you're slightly walking on thin ice whenever you talk about his personal life, because he's not... I'll tell you why. Because he's not talking about Boris Johnson's personal life.
Well, he is. He's talking about parties as well, isn't he? The parties... No, you've made a point, so I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. He is talking about parties that happened in Boris Johnson's personal life. These are not necessarily, if they are parties, and they weren't necessarily... Because he lives at 10 Downing Street, right? And his wife, Carrie, a birthday cake, and him eating cake gate, that is a personal thing. So he shouldn't be opening his mouth and talking like that.
This is the second point I was going to make. It's not about his personal life. I don't care if he's got 7, 10 or 20 children. Maybe on environmental grounds I might argue with that. When it comes down to it, I don't care what somebody does personally. The issue that Boris Johnson's got, which I think you're both discounting, is he's being had up for one fundamental problem. Professionally, he's got this wrong. Now, John Major actually said or implied that that Boris Johnson had lied. Then he didn't go all the way and say, therefore, Boris Johnson needs to resign. It's a very simple, open and shut, yes or no, 0 or 1 case here. If a Prime Minister or any minister lies, then he needs to go. And he was actually asked in yesterday's press conference, whatever it was, if the Prime Minister lies, does he have to resign? And all John Major said was, that's always been the case. You can talk about his personal life. You might love talking about him.
It hasn't always been the case. They're always lying, and some of them still.
Well, but they're always lying.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Tony Blair. What do you think, Emma?
I think that I've been very critical of Boris. So in many ways, I actually agree with what John Major is saying. And I do think that there's a very good argument for him resigning. I think if he were being, upright as an individual and as a politician, then he probably would resign. So I'm not completely in disagreement with John Major. But the problem that I have with what he said is that I think that he's being cynical. I think that this is disingenuous. I think that he's just taking a cheap shot because he's a bitter Remainer. And I think that, and actually a lot of the, MPs who have come out against this, including people like Zach Goldsmith, hilarious, cutting responses to it. I think that John Major is being a hypocrite, and I think that he's being cynical, and that's the reason why I would criticise him, not because I particularly disagree with his criticisms of Boris.
Let me ask you this question then. OK, the Tories are the most effective electoral machine in the world. Do you think they're going to gain or lose under Boris Johnson if he's still the Prime Minister in the local elections in May?
Oh, absolutely.
You think they'll gain or lose?
I think they'll lose.
Okay.
No, I think that
so why have him there?
OK, that's enough. You said one question. That's the second question. Sorry. I have to move this on. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
So just tuned in. Welcome on board. You're with me, Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, it's time for the Great British Debate. No, that wasn't it. And I'm asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? 6 times as many migrants crossed the Channel in small boats last month compared to January last year. To try and tackle the problem, France is building a network of CCTV cameras on its coast, and it's going to cost around about £54 million. And the UK government are going to sop them that cash. Now, we won't have access, sadly, to the footage. So should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? Send us your emails. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Tell us what you think. You can tweet us at GBNews. And currently there is a poll asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? Cast your vote now. First, let's get an update with the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's going to be increasingly windy and cloudy this evening with rain in places, and then, well, that sets us up for an unsettled weekend. One low after another arriving from the Atlantic. We've had high pressure in place during Friday, and that's led to a fine day for most of us, but the isobars are now tightening across the northwest. Rain soon arrives during the evening into Northern Ireland, Western Scotland as well, falling as snow above 300 or 400 metres for a time across Scotland as well as the Pennines. But eventually the strong and in places gale force southwesterly winds will bring milder air, so that turning to rain at all levels. Ahead of it, eastern England, perhaps a touch of frost in places first thing during the night, but temperatures rising by dawn, and as a result it's a frost-free start for most, but it's a windy start. The coastal gales in western Scotland transferring to Irish Sea coasts. The rain initially light and on and off, turning more heavy and persistent for northern England, Wales, and pushing into the Midlands as well as southwest England by the afternoon. To the southeast, staying dry and bright, 8 Celsius here. To the north, Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery showers, but a little milder, 10 or 11 Celsius. It's within this central zone, northern England into the Midlands, Wales, and then eventually southern parts of the England, where we're going to see some spells of rain into the evening, easing off for a time before the next bout of wet and windy weather arrives by dawn into western parts of Wales and England. On Sunday morning, we'll start off with temperatures at around 5 to 8 Celsius in most places. Some brighter spells for eastern and northern Scotland at first, but for the vast majority, it is a wet and windy day. Coastal gales for the south coast of England. The most persistent rain affecting parts of Wales and western England. Risk of disruption in places from that accumulated rain through the weekend. Monday and Tuesday stays very changeable.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
every night at 11 on GB News. We bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
If you just joined us, where have you been? It's 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And of course, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? Now, France is building a CCTV network to stop migrants and catch smugglers organising illegal crossings. It's their latest attempt to increase the number of crossings that they block. Currently, they only intercept around about 40% of illegal journeys. But the cameras, with 360-degree coverage and automatic number plate recognition, will seek £54 million worth of funding from the UK government. And surprisingly, though, despite giving money, the UK won't have access to the cameras and will still rely on French authorities to tackle the issue. So should we really be funding France's response to the crisis? I'm joined by Steve Valdez-Simmons, who's Amnesty UK's Refugee and Migrant Rights Programme Director. Thank you so much for joining me, Steve. What do you make of this whole idea of cameras and a network to police the French coasts?
Well, I don't think it's likely to prove to be helpful to anyone, frankly. I think the issue is that there are a significant, not an extraordinary, but a significant number of people who are unable to find safety in France or who have particularly good reasons to need to seek safety in this country. And this country receives very few people. And so while it makes no provision for anybody to come to this country to make an asylum claim, these are the sorts of journeys that people make. And if we continue to spend more and more money simply seeking to disrupt journeys and forcing people onto ever more dangerous attempts to find safety here, we're going to waste money and harm people in the meantime. And that's what I think this is likely to do.
It's interesting. I mean, you don't say harm people in the meantime, but surely some way of stopping the people from getting on the boats, in a sense, would be a good move. The fact that it might discourage people from taking that crossing, because some of those boats are sinking, people are dying. We can't surely carry on with this system that we have at the moment. We've got to do something, right?
Well, I agree that we shouldn't carry on with what we're doing at the moment, but steps like this are carrying on with what we're doing at the moment, because what we do, and what we've done for many years, is to devise ever more restrictive means to prevent people making any journey at all, whether authorised or not, and making no provision for the safety that people need or the reuniting with family here that people seek. And while we do that, all that does is means that people have to find other ways of trying to achieve what they are entitled to do, which is to seek asylum here. Few do, but those who do are entitled to do it. And we keep basically allowing smugglers to thrive by ever more dangerous routes that are ever more profitable to them.
But surely this is a way of not allowing smugglers to thrive, to try and make profit out of this. I mean, this is a step forward. I hear you that we probably need to look at proper routes for migration. But surely this particular aspect is a positive thing. It's going to stop people from getting, hopefully, onto those boats that could end up with them dying.
Well, the problem is I don't think it is, because it's like the last step and the last step before that and the step before that. All of them are about stopping or trying to stop or deter particular types of journeys, as you say, dangerous ones. And each time there's some success in closing down one route, smugglers, who are very devious and very profitable, find new routes. And oftentimes those routes turn out to be more dangerous than the last one. And I'm afraid if you do nothing about providing the routes that some people need, all you do is displace people onto ever more dangerous journeys while spending enormous sums of money that just keep smugglers in business.
So you'd say these cameras are no good, even if the UK did have access to them, there's just no point to it?
Well, if the UK was also providing the means for people who have good reason to make these journeys, providing them safe and lawful journeys and access to that, then maybe there would be reason to have cameras and steps like this. But in the absence of the one, this effort is just, I fear, going to do more harm.
Steve Valdez-Simmons, thank you so much for talking to us. He's a Refugee and Migrant Rights Director at Amnesty International UK. Well, I'm also joined in the studio by Alp Mehmet. He's the chair of the Migration Watch. Alp, you heard what Steve has said. I think he agreed with me, actually, in the end, because I'm pretty sure I started by saying that if we actually had a proper sort of migration strategy for people, that the cameras would be a good thing. And he sort of, in the end, slightly agreed with me. But what's the issue that we're having here?
Well, it's an issue that's been going on for a while, and clearly we're finding it very difficult to find a solution to the problem. I agree with Steve to a certain extent that the cameras, frankly, are not going to be the solution. They're not the magic wand that is suddenly going to stop people trying to get into this country legally or illegally. I would disagree with him that we don't actually already provide plenty of safe routes for people to come here. And over the past year, if you include those who've come from Hong Kong, those who've come from Afghanistan, add to that those who've come here from Syria over the past few years, we're talking about 120 to 150,000 people in the last year alone. So it's not that there aren't opportunities for people to come to this country if they're seeking refuge. The demand, though, is huge. It's massive, frankly. And if Steve thinks that somehow we're going to put in place a system that allows all those people who are jumping into boats now to be able to apply and come here regularly, I think he's deluding himself. The demand is far too big for that to happen. And if we had any posts in France or wherever else, it would soon be swamped by people, overrun by people wanting to come here.
Well, see, because I thought, of course, the migrants are coming from lots of different countries, and I thought we did have deals with lots of different countries as to how we can take in refugees. So when he said that, I presume that he's saying that there's nothing for people who are in France to cross to the UK safely. That's where I'm thinking that he's talking. Well, is that the case then? If you are in France and you want to get to this country as a migrant, that it's literally impossible to do that. That's what he seems to be saying.
If you're in France and you're looking for a safe refuge somewhere, if you're fleeing persecution, then frankly, it's France that you should be applying for it in, or indeed the other countries that you've passed through. But simply to say, and it's all very well for France to say, we want money to put various systems in place to try and thwart people. But the fact is that we are paying them effectively to do what they should be doing anyway. They're not doing that at the moment, and that is part of the problem. The people who are coming across in dinghies, frankly, they are doing it because they can. They know that once they get into that dinghy and they're picked up by a British vessel, they're home and dry. That's why. And that's the reason why the traffickers are making so much money, because it's so easy to do. Until we send the message back that if you come to this country in that way, you're not going to be given refuge, you're going to be sent whence you came from, then until we get that message over, I'm afraid people will still continue to come. The government, at the same time, is trying to deny us the knowledge, the facts of what is actually going on. They're now not reducing not giving out, they're not informing us of what is happening on a daily basis in the way they were. They're going to give out the figures every 3 months or so. I mean, that is a nonsense. That's hiding. That's running away scared from what is going on. Well, and that's why we've started a petition. So please, viewers of GB News, go to our petition and sign it and say, keep us informed of what is going on, government.
It doesn't seem too much to ask, does it? But I suspect they're doing it so it doesn't look as bad, because if one day you've got 1,000, the next day you've got 3, then it's sort of, you don't need to report. If you reported the 3, it wouldn't sound bad, would it? But then obviously they're doing it across a period of time, which should average out a lot as a smaller number.
Well, no, it won't.
That's what they're hoping. It's going to sound smaller, isn't it?
Well, I'm afraid that's an excuse, really, for keeping the public in the dark. We need to know what is going on. We need to monitor their incompetence, because that's what it is at the moment.
Yeah, well, I mean,
they're not keeping us informed.
I don't disagree with you there. And the camera's good or bad thing, then? Is it a start, at least?
It's a start, but we're talking about a camera every half a kilometre, really, over a 10-mile stretch of beach. I mean, that's a nonsense. It's and let's not forget that we've already given something like £200 million to the French over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Well, listen, Alp, thank you so much for talking to me about that. That is, of course, Alp He's the chairman for Migration Watch UK. So let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Elliot says it's France's job to police their own borders, just as it's our job to police ours. We should not be giving them money to do what they should be doing in any case. Bob says possibly, but pay by results rather than giving them all the cash up front. Matt says, well, we left the EU, plain and simple. They need to sort it themselves, frankly. Keep your thoughts coming. If you've just joined me, where have you been? You're with me, Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and political commentator Emma Webb. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. It's 4:34. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The Defence Secretary says there are no plans for the UK to send 600 special forces into Ukraine at any stage. Speaking in Moscow earlier, Ben Wallace says the Russian government told him they have no intention of invading their neighbour. Mr. Wallace said that NATO will remain defensive, but are not seeking confrontation. The Home Secretary says the next Metropolitan Police Commissioner faces stark challenges as she begins the process of choosing Dame Cressida Dick's replacement. Priti Patel says the culture and force, the behaviour of some officers within the force needs an overhaul by a new leader. Dame Cressida announced her departure yesterday after losing the confidence of the London Mayor in the wake of a series of scandals. UK health officials say a patient has died with a confirmed case of Lassa fever. The UK Health Security Agency say the person died in Bedfordshire following the discovery of 2 cases of the Ebola-like virus in England earlier this week. They say the risk to the general public is very low. In other news, Labour MP Neil Coyle has had the party whip suspended after allegedly making racist comments to a journalist. Mr Coyle is accused of using offensive language towards British-Chinese reporter Henry Dyer in a bar in the House of Commons. He's apologised to everyone involved. Spain has dropped its entry requirement for British children over the age of 12 to be fully vaccinated. They'll now only have to provide proof of a recent negative COVID test. Meanwhile, fully vaccinated passengers will no longer need to take a test when arriving in the UK. TV, online and D+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube. You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's fast approaching 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. So back to our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? France is building a CCTV network to stop migrants and catch smugglers organising illegal crossings. The cameras will be paid for with £54 million worth of funding from the UK government, so that's our money. But despite this, our security agencies won't have access to the footage. So should we really be funding France's response to the crisis? We've heard what the experts think, but now it's the turn of my panel. I'm joined by political commentator Emma Webb and former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Right, so interesting stuff. Well, we're here again. We've got the whole migrant issue with the crossings and everything else like that. And Francis, we've come up with this idea. I don't know whether it was our idea or France's idea. Cameras on the borders, which sounds like a good idea, but we can't view them.
Two problems. Curing the symptoms, not the cause. You can't just police the entire border, the entire beaches of France. But there's a more fundamental issue here. We don't check, really. We don't stop people leaving the UK. So why do you expect the French to stop people leaving France? The issue isn't leaving France, it's coming into France. But of course, the EU is a whole big unit. You don't get checked in between those countries, not in a serious way. You can drive from one end of Europe to the other without really being stopped. So the question is, did we leave for a reason, or is the whole thing entirely theoretical? If we did leave for a reason, there's a cost to that. Now, this may seem counterintuitive because I think that Boris's government has completely messed up the Brexit agenda. But on this one, the French need to be at least honest about why they're not arguing about the other end of people coming in who shouldn't be in their country. You seem dubious about this.
Well, I'm confused at what you're saying there. I don't think it makes much sense to me. I'm listening. So you're saying that France actually need to see who's coming into their country as well as who's leaving it. So when people are coming in via different routes in the EU, they need to know that.
No, what I'm saying is consistency. If I said it confusingly, I apologise. We don't care much who leaves this. Don't look at me like that. That patronising way.
I didn't. I just raised my eyes. So get on with it. Get on with it.
To be fair,
I was being judged there.
Way in this situation, there is no migrant flow going in the other direction, so it's too much.
That's not true, actually.
No, they're not coming from the UK, taking dinghies and going off to France. That's what Emma's saying.
But hang on a second.
Have you seen anybody? Do we know? If
Wait a minute.
Getting
we're not talking.
Nobody ever wants to escape this country. Do we know if people have been getting on dinghies?
So why do we have a problem with low-skilled workers? Hang on, you two. Why do we have a problem with low-skilled workers if they're not flowing back to other countries?
The reason we have a problem with low-skilled workers is because they're also low-paid. So the people in this country rightly refuse to do the jobs because otherwise then they'll lose all their benefits and won't be able to live in their home. Okay, the cost of living is too high.
To quote a great broadcaster, I'm slightly confused by your answer because on the one side...
Emma understood it, unfortunately for you.
Okay,
Emma, what do you think?
Explain Nana's position to me then, please.
No, sorry, I asked the questions.
Alp made this point, and I think that he's absolutely bang on, is that we've already thrown hundreds of millions to the French to deal with this problem, and they haven't dealt with it. I don't believe that giving them another 53 million and using that money to buy these cameras and for, as you said, that only they will have access to. I don't think that we are by throwing more money at them, we are going to buy French will to deal with the problem. And especially if we can't access those cameras ourselves, we have no idea whether or not they're really going to be dealing with the problem. And as Alp said, the distance between these cameras is going to be such that they're going to be nigh on useless anyway. I just think that this is another cosmetic plastering over the issue. We need to deal with the problem at its source. It's extremely complex. This is something that has been getting worse and worse and worse over the last, 8 or more years now. And the statistics on this are absolutely bamboozling. That in the last year in 2021 we were past 20,000 people a year. We're expecting between 40 and 60,000 this year. The year before that it was only 8,000. It's going up and up and up, and I don't believe that throwing more money at the French is going to deal with the problem or buy their will to deal with it.
I actually think you're right. This is going to get worse because precedent means that you've got you've got a very high chance of getting here safely, though obviously people drown in the Channel. I feel that Nana's challenge to him was right. What I'm saying is the French border is actually the European border now. So it's people who come into the EU. Once you're in the EU, you can actually get to the Channel. But all I'm saying, and I can summarise it in 10 seconds, The UK doesn't really monitor who leaves.
5 seconds.
Pardon?
5 seconds.
OK, but we monitor who comes in. It would be great to monitor who comes into the EU, and I actually think probably because of our Brexit decision, we should pay something. Whether it's £54 million is a different debate.
Listen, I'll tell you where I stand with it. I don't mind putting the cameras up there if it helps in any way, shape or form. I'm OK with it. But it's like me giving my daughter a mobile phone, which she has, paying for it and then saying, I'm never going to look at it. That's just not going to happen. If I'm putting money behind it, I want to see what's going on. So I'm happy to have some cameras. It's a start, at least, because ultimately what people are dying taking this route that they shouldn't be taking. And France is not a dangerous country. So if you are fleeing persecution and you're coming from France, then you are not fleeing persecution. What you're deciding is that you would like to come to the UK. And there should be a proper and valid route, which Steve said there wasn't, but I'm sure there must be, because we've got, you know, routes for refugees from all over the world to come to this country. We can't just look at it in one small thing and say, oh, it's France, and we don't have people coming, because we actually have a huge immigration and migration from refugees all around the world. And I think he needs to factor that in. But I do believe that actually, you know, we are actually saving lives from people crossing the Channel, and all, that awful industry as well of people smuggling needs to stop.
We need results. It's a nonsense.
3-second answer, I agree. If we're going to pay for the cameras, we need to get the data. There's something called GDPR, which might be technically demanding. But if we're going to pay £54 million, let's at least get the data. And it's going to be helpful for us policing at the side.
Well, I think so. And, you know, and I know it's a wide border, right? There are gaps. And they'll probably try and come to the gaps, but we can police the gaps, can't you? I mean, you can try and police the gaps, but we've got to do something. We can't just sit here going, oh, well, you know, it's really complex. It's such a difficult problem. We're just going to let them pay, what is it, 1.2 million a day, or I think it's up to 4 million a day, to house migrants in hotels, whilst the people of this country, some of them not even able to afford their electric bills. It doesn't make any sense.
And then people get accused of being jingoistic when they say that. I actually agree with both of you on this very simple point. We have to control who comes into the EU, not who leaves it. In the same way, we're supposed to control who comes into the UK, not who leaves it.
And there's also a legal point as well, which Al also alluded to, which is that they're supposed to seek refuge in the first safe country they're in. France is a safe country, so France really shouldn't be allowing them to cross in this direction.
Well, but they also are allowed to choose their country too, so there is that too. But let's see what our viewers think, because today I'm asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Ozzy says Europe should be made to help to pay the bill since they're largely at fault. Yep, Steve says we should pay our fair share, otherwise the migrant crisis will get out of our control. Let's help our French allies. Larry says if France can't stop armed people traffickers operating on their beaches and making millions a day, they don't deserve a single penny from the UK. Leonard has pointed out we need to sort our borders out ourselves. The buck stops with the UK government, not Macron. Daisy has said we have a huge job shortage in hospitality care and the NHS. Let's give these migrants a chance to contribute to our society. Currently, I've got a poll up there on Twitter as well throughout the show asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? And 94% of you say, no, we shouldn't be contributing. See? Listen, I don't think that we should contribute if we cannot access the cameras. There's no point to that.
Well, on the basis of this debate, I agree. We should get the data from the cameras, but assuming we can do this within the law. But I come back to this much more difficult point. Europe should police its borders about who comes in. Once they're in there, they can flow anywhere they want within those countries. Who comes out, we've set the precedent in the UK. If we want a different arrangement with France, then we do have to pay something for it. But we mustn't do this blind. We actually have to know who's coming in.
It's money. I think it's money down a well. Like I said, we've been giving them hundreds of millions to deal with the problem, and it's only gotten worse. It almost looks as if we're incentivising them to not deal with the problem because we keep handing them more and more money to deal with it, and they just simply don't. And I think it's quite clear that in both, you know, in terms of France's interest in Calais, but also electorally, it's in the interests of the French to allow these people to cross illegally, and in the process they are pandering to people smugglers, and I think any argument against dealing with the problem is an argument in favour of people smuggling.
Well, that's what I said.
Should have a lot on their conscience.
That's exactly what I said, and I got castigated for saying that, but it's true, isn't it? Yeah. If we do not change the system, we are actually funding the status quo, which is leading to death and a lot of people making a lot of money out of misery.
It's complicity in human trafficking.
Yeah, it's worse.
What happens here, the reason reason, in my view, you were criticised is because of this wokeness, which doesn't really think about the realities.
Well, that's of course right, isn't it?
People die because we're not allowed to talk about the implications of making that dangerous crossing. And people start hating migrants because we don't actually police this thing properly, whether we should be paying £54 million or not, without getting the
data.
data.
And it also means that resources are being spent on those who don't necessarily need it, so economic migrants who come across illegally and then enter into the asylum system, as opposed to those who are coming from places like Afghanistan and Hong Kong, who are here legitimately. You know, it should be a case of us prioritising the people who actually really need to be here, because we can't take in the whole world. We need to make decisions about who comes, and at the moment we just simply don't know who's coming in and into the country.
Well, obviously this is going to carry on. We need some decent policies and we need some good ideas and some forward thinking and perhaps a bit of unity, working a little bit harder with the French and they perhaps working with us just a bit. This is GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. After the break, there's been a huge breakthrough in our fight against breast cancer. The new treatment could cut the risk of an aggressive form of the disease returning by more than a third. I'll be speaking to this study lead next, but first, let's get a weather update.
Hello, I'm Ada McGiven. It's going to be increasingly windy and cloudy this evening with rain in places, and then, well, that sets us up for an unsettled weekend. One low after another arriving from the Atlantic. We've had high pressure in place during Friday, and that's led to a fine day for most of us, but the isobars are now tightening across the northwest. Rain soon arrives during the evening into Northern Ireland, Western Scotland as well, falling as snow above 300 or 400 metres for a time across Scotland as well as the Pennines. But eventually the strong and in places gale force southwesterly winds will bring milder air, so that turning to rain at all levels. Ahead of it, eastern England, perhaps a touch of frost in places first thing during the night, but temperatures rising by dawn. And as a result, it's a frost-free start for most, but it's a windy start. The coastal gales in western Scotland transferring to Irish Sea coasts. The rain initially light and on and off, turning more heavy and persistent for northern England, Wales, and pushing into the Midlands as well as southwest England by the afternoon. To the southeast, staying dry and bright, 8 Celsius here. To the north, Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery showers, but a little milder, 10 or 11 Celsius. It's within this central zone, Northern England into the Midlands, Wales, and then eventually southern parts of the England, where we're going to see some spells of rain into the evening, easing off for a time before the next bout of wet and windy weather arrives by dawn into western parts of Wales and England. On Sunday morning, we'll start off with temperatures at around 5 to 8 Celsius in most places. Some brighter spells for eastern and northern Scotland at first, but for the vast majority, it is a wet and windy day. Coastal gales for the south coast of England. The most persistent rain affecting parts of Wales and western England. Risk of disruption in places from that accumulated rain through the weekend. Monday and Tuesday stays very changeable.
We've got a big Saturday for you on GB News. From 6 a.m, it's breakfast with Stephen and Anne. At 10, join Esther and Philip for the Saturday selection. Alistair, Darren and Nana take you through the day. And don't miss Neil Oliver Live at 7 p.m. At 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight, followed by Headliners. That's Saturday on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube. You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. You're either watching live on TV or online or even on a digital radio. Right, so this is a fabulous breakthrough and I'm very excited to talk to you about this one. It's a new treatment for breast cancer and it could save thousands of lives, cutting the risk of an aggressive form of the disease returning by more than a third. Researchers at Queen Mary University of London and Barts Health NHS Trust found that the drug Keytruda helps someone's immune system recognise and attack cancer cells. And I'm joined by our political commentator Emma Webb and former Liberal Democrat MP Lembed Opik to see what they think about that. Now isn't that amazing? A little while ago I had this thing called Difficult Conversations, which I do every Saturday on my show at 5, make sure you tune in. And we spoke about a lady, a fabulous artist, her name was Helen Lack. And she had triple-negative breast cancer, and we went to speak to her at the Peace Hospice where she was in Hertfordshire. And, I mean, she sadly died. But the problem with this particular type of breast cancer, triple-negative, is that it doesn't respond to any treatment really at all. And that's the issue, and it has a very high propensity of returning. So this is great. I mean, obviously, I mean, Emma, are you aware of that one and triple-negative? And
Well, I mean, I think this is so exciting, and actually even just reading the story, I've got goosebumps because this is going to mean so much to so many people around the country. And I think particularly during the pandemic, so many people who have gone without their treatment and have therefore had a situation where their cancer has gone worse, it's come back in a more aggressive form. And, you know, the devastation that people feel when you're getting towards you know, running out of solutions to try and deal with cancer. And it says breast cancer here, but also it mentions bladder cancer, lung cancer. This has been used to treat as well. This is, I mean, it's not only life-changing for the individuals who have cancer, but also for their entire families.
Well,
and this is going to be a real beacon of hope for so many people around the country.
Well, it's the fear of it returning. But what you know, reading about this treatment, what it does is it actually gets your immune system to actually attack the disease itself, to recognise the disease so that your immune system can attack it as well, which is a whole new way of looking at things, isn't it?
Yeah, I always think the aggressive commentary about this is slightly difficult, attacking and killing a disease. The ideal for me is that we work with these diseases to get peace. And it seems to me this is actually quite a good example of where the immune system almost negotiates the cancer away. Maybe that sounds a bit like soft, but I actually think that's probably more permanent. My mother died last year and she was kept alive by advancing treatments. Now, you can always say, we'll all die of something, but people don't have to die of this. And I think that part of our mission as a species, really, is to find ways to extend life so that we don't die needlessly. And I think that's what's happened here.
And the treatments for cancer are really moving forward. And this sort of, I mean, we'll get some more sort of input on this particular treatment, but I sort of like the way that it actually works with your immune system, because I think that's more in keeping how we should be doing things, because obviously chemotherapy, which it does actually work with chemotherapy, which is what this particular trial revealed, was that it was quite effective, and then you'd have the treatment after the chemotherapy, after you've been through the treatment again, and it seems to help the breast cancer stop it from returning. And that's the problem with cancer, is that when it returns as a secondary cancer elsewhere, even though it's still called breast cancer, that's the devastation. That's when it's usually difficult to treat. But I tell you what, I'm joined by the study lead, Professor Peter Schmid, a professor of cancer medicine at Queen Mary and St Bartholomew's Hospitals. Professor, he's on the line. Thank you for joining us. Now, this research is 3 years in the making. Can you tell us a bit more about the drug and the research and the trial itself?
Yeah, thank you very much for covering this today. This is a really important area. We've known for a long time that there's a link between cancer and the immune system. And some cancers just use an immune protective cloak, almost like camouflage, to hide from the immune system. What these immune drugs do, pembrolizumab, but there are others out there as well, they take away this immune protective cloak and therefore enable the immune system to detect and ultimately target the cancer. The treatment works very well and works best when combined with chemotherapy. And we had previously established similar treatments for patients with secondary breast cancer, as you mentioned earlier. But really our hope was to bring this into early breast cancer, where our goal of the treatment is to cure patients. And so we combined immune therapy with standard chemotherapy, gave this to patients with stage 2, stage 3 early triple-negative breast cancer prior to surgery as a combined therapy. And what we learned is that patients responded substantially better, and we reduced the risk of recurrences by nearly 40%, which means we're curing essentially another 40% of patients with the combination.
It's just incredible, the advances that this is taking on. So you mentioned that you tried it on secondary cancers. Was it that it wasn't effective? And also, who is the primary candidate for this particular treatment?
So in this latest study in early triple-negative breast cancer, it is for all women with a tumor type called triple-negative breast cancer. These are breast cancers that do not respond to targeted therapies with hormones or something called HER2-targeted therapy. And any woman who has a tumor larger than 2 centimeters or with lymph node involvement, so advanced early-stage disease, who have not received prior therapy, who are waiting for surgery, would get chemotherapy together with immune therapy for 6 months, followed by surgery, and then followed by immune therapy for another 6 months after surgery. And with that treatment, we can substantially improve the chances for those women to be cured.
Wow. So are you saying that this can help with a slightly more advanced breast cancer then? Because you're saying if you've got lymph node involvement, or is that what you're saying? I just wanted to clear, because I know a lot of people will be listening and wanting to find out more about the treatment.
Yes, so to be very clear, this is still for early breast cancer, which means the tumor, the cancer, is confined to the breast and to the lymph nodes under the armpit. But it is not the smallest cancer. So for cancers that are less than 1 centimeter in size and haven't gone anywhere else, the outlook for those women is at the moment so good that we don't need such an intensive therapy. And so this is for patients with early breast cancer, but slightly larger tumors, or cancers that have already started traveling away from the breast and got stuck in the lymph nodes under the armpit.
Wow. And I know we're running out of time, so I have to be very brief. If people want to find out about this, can they get this treatment from their doctors, or what would somebody who is listening now who may have triple-negative breast cancer and meets the criteria that you're saying, what will they have to do to try and access this treatment?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So this is very new data. The drug is already approved in the US for this situation, but we're waiting for this treatment to be approved in the UK. Once it is approved, then we hope it will be available within the NHS, but we have to wait for approval for this, which I would hope will come in the next few months.
Oh, wonderful. Listen, next few months. Thank you so much, Professor. Really good to talk to you. That's
Thank
Professor
you very much.
Peter Schmid. He's a study leader of the this fabulous research at the Queen Mary and St Bartholomew's Hospital. You're watching me, Nana Akua. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. Right, so for this next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 5:02. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The Defence Secretary says Russia could mount an invasion of Ukraine at any time. But speaking in Moscow earlier, Ben Wallace says the Russian government assured him they have no intention of invading their neighbour. Mr Wallace also says there are no plans for the UK to send 600 special forces to Ukraine, adding he hopes there is a way forward after today's talks.
I was clear about the tragic consequences that any invasion of Ukraine could have for all people, both Ukrainian, Russia and the security of Europe. We listened to the assurances given by Minister Shoigu and indeed General Gerasimov that they would not invade Ukraine, and we urged dialogue as a way through to address any concerns that the Russian government may have.
The Home Secretary says the next Metropolitan Police Commissioner faces stark challenges as she looks to find a replacement for Dame Cressida Dick. Priti Patel says the culture at the force and the behaviour of its officers needs an overhaul by a new leader. Dame Cressida Dick announced her departure yesterday. GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White has the latest on the hunt for the next commissioner.
Here at the Home Office, Priti Patel has confirmed that she has now begun the process to find a new Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Any replacement for Cressida Dick, she says, would have to show strong and decisive leadership to deal with the institutional issues that have plagued the Metropolitan Police in recent years. It is also the most political of policing roles, having to straddle the competing demands of a Labour London Mayor and a Conservative Home Secretary. And like every police commissioner before them, the new head of Scotland Yard is unlikely to be in the post long before they face their own fresh controversies.
UK health officials say a patient has died with a confirmed case of Lassa fever. The UK Health Security Agency says the person died in Bedfordshire following the discovery of the 2 cases of the Ebola-like virus in England earlier this week. They say risk to the general public remains low. Labour MP Neil Coyle has had the party whip suspended after allegedly making racist comments to a journalist. The Bermondsey and Old Southwark MP is accused of using offensive language towards British Chinese reporter Henry Dyer in the bar in the House of Commons. Neil Coyle has apologised to everyone involved. The UK economy grew by a record 7.5% in 2021, following a large fall in the year before due to the pandemic. Official figures show GDP grew by 1% in the final quarter last year, despite the impact of the Omicron variant in December. But economists are warning inflation and tax rises could dampen confidence in the coming months. All COVID restrictions in Wales could be lifted by the end of March. That's according to the Welsh Economy Minister. Vaughan Gething has given a briefing on the changes in place of First Minister Mark Drakeford, who's self-isolating after testing positive for COVID. COVID passports will end next week and face masks will no longer be required in museums or cinemas from the end of the month. Spain has dropped its entry requirement for British children over the age of 12 to be fully vaccinated. They'll now only have to show proof of a recent negative COVID test. Meanwhile, fully vaccinated passengers will no longer need to take a test when arriving back in the UK. In other news, the cost of diesel has spiked, leading to fears that businesses will further increase prices for customers. The AA says the average price of a litre of fuel hit 151.21 pence, and that this latest jump increases pressure on inflation. Exports of Scotch whisky rose by almost a fifth last year to more than £4.5 billion. They were helped by the end of US tariffs, which were imposed by former President Donald Trump. The Scotch Whisky Association says the main driver was a 71% increase in demand from Latin America, but exports are still 8% down on pre-pandemic levels. And koalas have officially been listed as endangered along much of Australia's east coast. Their population has fallen by around 30% compared with 3 years ago due to droughts, bushfires and land clearing. The Australian Koala Foundation estimates there are fewer than 58,000 koalas left in the country. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
Hello, good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, it's coming up to 8 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is political commentator Emma Webb, and former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opit. Still to come in a few moments. We'll put the spotlight on a particular guest or subject matter in my feature Friday Focus. And this week I'm joined by two people who have very different views on a new report suggesting that red tape and continued disruption at borders is strongly reducing the UK's ability to trade with the EU. The Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Cressida Dick's job an impossible one? The Metropolitan Police Commissioner says that she was left with no choice but to resign after London Mayor Sadiq Khan made it clear he has no confidence in her leadership. It follows cases of sexism and misogyny among some and Met officers. So I'm asking, is her job an impossible one?
It's not responsible for the road cops. Those were always there.
I'm joined by former Met Police officer Chris Hobbs. What do you think? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. But it's time for Friday Focus. And in 2020, the UK officially left the EU. But it's only now that we're starting to understand the difference that it makes to us and our relationship with the Union. And this week, a report from the Public Accounts Committee suggested that Brexit red tape has made things more difficult for businesses and suppressed trade in and out of the UK. Now, the committee says that some of the required infrastructure will not be completed in time, and there's still concerns about staffing. Later this year, travellers, including HGV drivers entering the EU, will need to go through biometric passport checks involving facial recognition and fingerprint scans as part of the EU's entry and exit system, causing concerns over increased delays. So, has Brexit ruined UK trade, or has it opened us up to the rest of the world? Let's start by speaking to Martin Fletcher, a journalist and author. Martin, thank you for joining me this afternoon. What do you think of the concerns raised in this report?
Well, it's not just the Public Accounts Committee, of course. The Office of Budget Responsibility said that Brexit will knock 4% off Britain's GDP on a long-term basis. And 4% is a lot of money. That's a lot of money that's not going to go into local services helping red wall voters. It's not just the Office of Budget Responsibility. It's Lord Frost, it's Brexiters saying who are upset with the government because they haven't Brexit hasn't generated the benefits that they were promised. I would throw the question back at you, Nana. It distresses me, but I think we're going to disagree again. Can you name a single industry or sector of commerce that has benefited from Brexit? Anyone. It's not the fishermen, it's not the farmers, it's not our car industry, it's not artists and musicians who now have to get visas to go to...
Is that a rhetorical question? Listen, I'll tell you what I think. I think, first of all, it's way too soon to determine that. I think but this is something that requires time, as you know. Some of the structures haven't yet been properly put in place. And as you know, it was very difficult to even get Brexit over the line because there was so much antagony from people who were actually trying to oppose a democratic vote. So I personally think that it's not being given enough time. And we've had a pandemic to deal with as well. So really and truly, in answer to your question, I suspect there will be quite a lot of winners. There will always be losers. We know this. But right now, looking at the industries, the pandemic probably had a lot of effect on it. So it would be very difficult to work out really what's currently happening with the whole situation, if I'm honest.
2 years. We've had 6 years since the referendum. 6 years to prepare. And we were told the countries would be queuing up to do trade deals with us. Where are they? And where in particular is the one with America that we were promised? They haven't materialised. Boris Johnson, after he became Prime Minister, promised that Britain would ping off the guy ropes and be unleashed. I've seen no evidence of this. Then we now have Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's made the Brexit, and he's going to readers of The Sun asking for ideas for cutting red tape. If this red tape was so oppressive when we were in the European Union, surely we'd have had some idea of how to get rid of it. What, in fact, we've done is replaced a whole layer of EU bureaucracy with a whole new layer of red tape and bureaucracy that is generated by us.
Well, I'd say that we've probably replaced their red tape with green tape, which is in the form of net zero, if I'm totally honest with that one. But I mean, won't go into that. But look, I mean, the point of Brexit, surely it was to expand our opportunities and our capacity to trade with partners who we couldn't really trade properly with or create our proper deals with outside the EU. So this is definitely a good thing. Surely there is that extended capacity now, and we don't have to follow any EU guidelines.
But the EU accounts for 50%, half of all our imports and exports. I mean, surely you look at that market before you start exploring new markets. And I don't see any new markets opening up apart from Australia, which the Australian trade deal we struck is going to increase GDP by 0.01%. Well, I tell you, the trade that we've lost with Europe exceeds that by many, many times.
But of course, we'd only have figures of the high percentage of trade deals that we had with the EU because we were in the EU and we couldn't really trade efficiently outside it. So, I mean, I don't know whether that's the thing that you've quoted is relevant. And you yourself have now pointed out a trade deal that we've done with Australia. So, again, that's a potential deal that we may not have been able to do within the EU. What can we do then? Because in terms of if we look at the whole situation at the borders and all that, what would your suggestions be so that we can sort of streamline the flow of goods between Britain and the EU?
Well, first of all, I would stop picking ridiculous diplomatic arguments and spats with France and the rest of the EU in order to whip up the base, the Brexiteer base. It's populism run amok. It's time to put the country first and not the interests of this particular government. We should start establishing good relations. We should resolve the dispute over the Northern Irish Protocol, which we signed. It was part of a treaty that Boris Johnson had claimed. He said it was an oven-ready treaty. It turns out it's nothing of the sort. Our Prime Minister is picking fights with Europe in order to distract attention from his own domestic problems, to inflame the Brexit base, and it's grotesquely irresponsible. It's very bad for the country, and he should start putting the country first. This is a Prime Minister.
Martin, we're running out of time. We're running out of time, Martin. But this is a great chat, and hopefully we'll get you in the studio, and we can have a good old tete-a-tete then. Thank you very much, Martin. Lovely to talk to you.
Agree.
That's Martin Fletcher. Okay. He's a journalist and author. Thank you so much for joining me. Oh, wow. I'm joined now in the studio by Keith Prince, a Conservative and the Deputy Chair of the London Assembly. Keith, well, you heard what he said. You campaigned for Brexit. Do you think it's fair to judge it at this early stage?
No, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, one of the points that Martin made was about we've had 6 years to do trade deals, but he forgets to mention the fact that we were not allowed to enter into doing trade deals until we'd left the EU. So we couldn't start until we'd gone. So it's just a red herring. It's just sour grapes, I think, really. We are now a free country. We can do our own thing. OK, we might have to introduce some red tape at the borders, but then that's our red tape, not someone else's red tape. And you and I both know it takes two to tango. So we don't have to have red tape if we use the French as an example. If the French actually are more adult about this and give us some freedoms, then we won't need to have it. But they're the ones who are now going to insist on biometric testing.
Because if they did a free trade deal with us, then this would all go into the ether.
Exactly.
But they don't want to do that because obviously then it would look like, hey, if you leave the EU, you then still get the same benefits. So this whole thing, because I know that the UK were willing to make a free trade deal with France and the EU, but this issue is actually created by a lack of will to create that environment for that to be the case.
Spot on, absolutely bob on. If we were to get a free trade deal with the EU, there'd be others queuing up to leave, and they want to punish us so that it puts others off leaving. So that's the real motivation for them being so awkward.
So what about the issue then with us doing less trade with Europe then? Why, because obviously as he said that we're doing less trade with them. Initially they were one of our biggest markets. why we're sort of turning our backs on them. I don't think we are, but I mean, you know, he makes a point.
Well, the interesting thing is, yes, we are doing less trade, but I think there's this thing called COVID that's been happening recently. You might have heard about it.
No, what is it? Tell me.
Yeah, no. So that's been driving down trade. But the interesting thing is that the EU are importing fewer goods than we are exporting. So the drop in trade from EU to us is greater than the drop in trade from us to EU. Well, that, in my books, helps our balance of trades. Happy days.
So do you think then that Brexit has been done in the right way?
I think Brexit could have been done a lot better, a lot quicker, but, you know, we had the issues with certain prime ministers really not getting behind the will of the people, and thank God Boris turned up and sorted that out. Same way as, you know, thank God Boris turned up and sorted out our issues around COVID and vaccination. So, yeah, OK, he's had a few parties, and that's another debate for another day, but in the really important issues, he's on it, you know, and he's over there dealing with Russia and so on, dealing with NATO. So these are things that these are the really important things at the moment that we need to deal with.
What, not Partygate? And do you think that some people would say that Brexit, whilst it's a good thing, I mean, we voted for it as a democratic vote, so it does sort of stick in my craw when people don't want to go along with the democratic mandate, which is how we run things here. But do you think that some have been stitched up, for example, Northern Ireland and the fishermen, or fisher people?
Yeah, I don't know what the woke term for a fisherman is, actually. So I think in regards to Northern Ireland, I think that's a really strange scenario, because it's like trying to create a border between part of the UK. I mean, I don't know whether we'd want a border between England and Scotland. Some people might be attracted to that. Obviously, the Romans thought it was a good idea. But then again, there are workarounds there, and I know that actually it says in the report, it's a really good report actually, it's well worth reading. In the report it says that we're working on workarounds. The EU are now coming to their senses a bit more about what's practical, what's not practical, and they're also going to have approved suppliers. So if there's a product that's going into Northern Ireland that's not going to go across the border, then those suppliers will be able to have more relaxed rules and regulations.
Well, let's see, because I'm also joined by with Lembit Opik and also Emma Webb, who are my panel this afternoon. Lembit, I know that you want to say something about this. What do you think?
Well, it seems to me, obviously, I understand what Keith Prince is saying. It seems to me that the one thing that the current Prime Minister promised was some sort of a free trade deal. And it's not necessarily Brexit that's gone wrong, it's just the failure of the government to negotiate this. If Keith wants to blame the European Union for it, fair enough. But I really do think that we've let ourselves down as a country, because if you speak to any product exporter, less services, but product exporter, it's a nightmare. Instead of like a seamless export to the rest of the European Union, it takes 4 or 8 weeks to get something out.
But he makes a good point, though. It takes two to tango, and if you're not getting if somebody's not cooperating with you, then it's very difficult to force a free trade deal. Emma?
I think that the question that we should be asking is, and you alluded to this already, is causation here, because the report itself actually admits that it's unclear and difficult to untangle whether this is to do with Brexit, whether it's to do with COVID, or a number of other factors. And as you say, when we talk about red tape, one of the reasons for leaving the European Union in the first place was to escape the stranglehold of that red tape on small businesses. So actually, I think that regardless of all of this, we are still open to the world. It's just simply not true that we haven't been successful in getting trade deals. People have been queuing up to get trade deals with us, and Liz Truss has been very successful in doing that. So actually, I think that, it's not surprising that we have had reduced trade with the EU. When we voted for Brexit, we knew that that was at least temporarily going to be the case. I think that, this is not really as alarming as people are making it out to be, and that actually Brexit has offered us an incredible opportunity to trade with the world. And once the pandemic is out of the way, then we'll be able to do that properly.
Of course. Emma, thank you for that. And of course, thank you to Keith Prince. Thank you very much. He's the Conservative Deputy Chair of the London Assembly. Right, so a spokeswoman for the government has said this. Traders have adapted well to the introduction of full customs controls on the 1st of January, with minimal disruption at the borders and inbound freight flowing effectively through ports. we are continuing to ensure that businesses get the support they need to trade effectively with Europe and seize new opportunities as we strike trade deals with the world's fastest growing markets, including one-to-one advice through the free-to-use export support service. So, coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Cressida Dick's job an impossible one? The Metropolitan Police Commissioner resigned last night after London Mayor Sadiq Khan said a change of leadership was needed to reform the force. So is the job at £250,000 a year of Metropolitan Police Commissioner an impossible task? We'll be back after this short break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. 26 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, online, on TV and on digital radio. It's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Dame Cressida Dick's job an impossible one? The Metropolitan Police Commissioner announced that she would step down last night after she said that she had no choice. London Mayor Sadiq Khan made it clear that he had no confidence in her leadership. Our Home and Security Editor Mark White has been looking back at a turbulent few years for Cressida Dick.
For months now, the pressure had been building on the UK's most senior police officer after repeated controversies within the Met undermined her leadership. In the end, it was London Mayor Sadiq Khan who effectively wielded the axe, telling the Commissioner she was on notice after yet more revelations of appalling behaviour among some of her officers. When he refused to give her his full backing, Dame Cressida said she felt her position was no longer tenable.
He has left me no choice but to step aside. I say this with deep sadness and regret. Undertaking this role, a Crown appointment, as a servant of the people of London and the United Kingdom, has been the greatest honour and privilege of my life.
Much of the recent pressure on Cressida Dick followed the fallout from the abduction, rape and murder of Sarah Everard by one of the Met's own officers. As appalling as that was, it was compounded by the Met's handling of the subsequent vigil, which descended into scenes of violence. Move back! The murders of sisters Biba Henry and Nicole Smallman in a North London park brought further outrage after it was revealed two officers who should have been guarding the murder scene had taken selfies next to the sisters' bodies. The final straw came last week after the police watchdog published messages sent by officers that used sexist, racist and homophobic language.
Last week, I made clear to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner the scale of the change I believe is urgently required to rebuild the trust and confidence of Londoners in the Met. I'm not satisfied with the Commissioner's response. It's clear that the only way to start to deliver the scale of the change required is to have new leadership right at the top of the Metropolitan Police.
Cressida Dick has agreed to stay on while arrangements are made to find a successor. But one former senior officer said the post had now become a poisoned chalice.
It does worry me that the way in which this commissioner has been treated by politicians, that perhaps some of the best people will question themselves as to whether they actually want to step into the line of fire. If you treat people badly, it's very difficult to replace them.
The Met Commissioner's role has never been far from controversy, the most political of policing jobs, where issues managed are often of national significance. And straddling the demands of a Labour mayor and Conservative Home Secretary only add to the complexities. Among rank-and-file police officers, there is widespread support for a commissioner who, unlike some of her predecessors, was largely seen as having their backs. But ultimately, it was the behaviour of some of those officers who brought an end to the career of Scotland Yard's first female commissioner. Mark White, GB News.
So they're looking back at Cressida Dick, her time as the Met Police Commissioner. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Cressida Dick's job of Met Police Commissioner an impossible one? And I'm joined by former Metropolitan Police Officer Chris Hobbs. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Right, so do you think that Cressida Dick stepping down was actually the right move?
I think she was faced with no choice, to be quite honest. She was coming under attack from all sides, from the media, from the Home Secretary, from the Mayor of London. And I think quite possibly a lot of us were saying, go, because not because she's necessarily doing a bad job, but because the pressure is becoming intolerable. So sadly she went, and under these sort of circumstances, it's a very sad end to her career, and it's angered an awful lot of Metropolitan Police officers. They are not happy. They're not happy with the role of the Mayor. They're not happy really with the fact that she's had to deal with some very difficult incidents, for want of a better word, some appalling incidents.
Do you think that there's a slight political motivation in there as well? And that this may have more to do with, obviously, Boris and her party, and his so-called parties, because it appears that she was, I mean, I don't know whether she was sitting on the information or whether, but she didn't seem to be such a negative thing for the Conservative Party. I mean, this could be very damaging depending on who takes over from her. So do you think there's a level of political motivation there? Because Sadiq Khan is obviously a Labour mayor as well.
I'm not sure. I think it's very difficult for her, as Mark said. She's basically got two masters. She's got the Home Secretary and she's got Mr Khan. Mr Khan, to be quite honest, as far as the police are concerned, has flip-flopped on a lot of issues. Yeah. Stop and search is one of them. I mean, he's been quoted as saying he wants to curb it, and then he's quoted as saying he wants to support it. So as far as police officers are concerned, and probably right up to the very top, they're really not sure where they stand with Mr Khan as mayor.
Yeah, it does seem a bit of a conflict there of interest, isn't it? You've got a Labour mayor, and you've got a police commissioner, but then she reports to Priti Patel, but he's her direct boss. It seems it's a bit messy.
Yes, I was just about to use that word as well. Yes, it is a bit messy, and it's a very difficult position, and it has been described as a poison chalice. So whoever becomes the next commissioner, and I've heard some ones I wince and shudder at the prospect of some of the candidates, potential candidates, but has to sort of straddle that line, and it's a very, very difficult line to straddle, especially at the moment with the current political situation. So I do feel for her. I'm sad that her career's ended on this note. As I think I mentioned to you before when we interviewed,
yes.
Twice I wasn't even under her command. And when my mum died in Jamaica, I was in Jamaica rather, and had to come back, I got a long email from Cressida Dick. She wasn't my direct boss. And then a few weeks later, a very good friend of mine, an immigration officer, committed suicide. I was pretty upset. I felt I could have prevented it. Another long email. She cares about her people. She cares about the officers under her command. So that's why she will be missed. And the last thing we want is a bully.
Do you think that she's literally being blamed for things that are historic within the police force? This is not something, I mean, the behaviours that we're seeing sort of being played out in the public don't appear to be things, I mean, obviously WhatsApp and certain things, new technologies have come into play, yes. Right? So she's come in when, things like WhatsApp, now, the internet is now a big force, whereas before it wasn't. So do you think that perhaps they haven't factored that sort of into the equation of how police officers behave?
I think you could argue it two ways. You could argue that, in fact, social media, WhatsApp, has exposed officers who shouldn't be in the force. Now, I was there in the late 70s, 80s, and I recognised elements of this culture, but it wasn't spread throughout the force, and I don't believe it is now. Unfortunately, comments from Mr. Khan, comments from the IOPC, comments from the media suggest that this is toxic, and it's like COVID. It's spreading to almost everyone in the Met. So every male officer now who goes out tonight on a Friday night, which is always a difficult night, will have this extra burden of being labelled as toxic, as a misogynist, as a racist, as a homophobe, and it will make life very difficult.
It will make life difficult. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for talking us through that. That's Chris Hobbs. He's a former Met police officer. You're with me, Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with our Great British Debate. I'm asking, is Dame Cressida Dick's job an impossible one? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, political commentator Emma Webb, and also former Liberal Democrat MP Leonard AP. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 5:35. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The Defence Secretary says Russia could mount an invasion of Ukraine at any time. But speaking in Moscow earlier, Ben Wallace says the Russian government assured him they have no intention of invading their neighbour. Mr Wallace also said there are no plans for the UK to send 600 special forces to Ukraine. The Home Secretary says the next Metropolitan Police Commissioner faces stark challenges as she looks to find a replacement for Dame Cressida Dick. Priti Patel says the culture at the force and the behaviour of its officers needs an overhaul. Dame Cressida Dick announced her departure yesterday after the London Mayor made it clear he'd lost confidence in her leadership. UK health officials say a patient has died with a confirmed case of Lassa fever. The UK security agency says the person died in Bedfordshire following the discovery of 2 cases of the Ebola-like virus in England earlier this week. They say risk to general public remains low. In other news, Labour MP Neil Coyle has had the party whip suspended after allegedly making racist comments to a journalist. Mr Coyle is accused of using offensive language towards British Chinese reporter Henry Dyer in the bar in the House of Commons. He's apologised to everyone involved. Spain has dropped its entry requirement for British children over the age of 12 to be fully vaccinated. They'll now only have to provide proof of a recent negative COVID test. Meanwhile, fully vaccinated passengers will no longer need to take a test when arriving back in the UK. On TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Let's get back to our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Dame Cressida Dick's job as Met Police Commissioner an impossible task? She announced that she would step down from the role last night, and it follows London Mayor Sadiq Khan saying that new leadership was needed to make the necessary reforms to the force. The Met's been embroiled in a number of scandals in recent years, from the Wayne Couzens killing of Sarah Everard to racist, misogynist and homophobic messages sent by officers. So I'm asking, is Dame Cressida Dick's job as Met Police Commissioner an impossible one? Let's see what my panel think. I'm joined by former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and political commentator Emma Webb. Emma, what do you make of the treatment for Cressida Dick? She's the first woman, female, there doing the job. Is it fair?
No, I don't think so. And I think in many ways her job is impossible, because I don't think that she, yes, in one sense she's responsible for leadership over the Met, but in another, it's not possible for her to know exactly what is going on with every single officer. This is, I think it was 14 officers out of 30-odd thousand. And Sadiq Khan has been portraying this as if it is a systemic problem within the police, that they are systemically homophobic, misogynistic and racist, and there's a litany of sins, really.
So you don't think they are? You don't think
I think that a lot of the allegations and a lot of the reports are absolutely heinous. But I think that there is, Sadiq Khan also bears some responsibility for example, rising crime rates in London. And I think that, he needs to take responsibility for that fact, and that a lot of the distrust in the police comes from his leadership, not necessarily Cressida Dick's, and not only the Metropolitan Police, but also the behaviour of police forces all around the country. And I think that there is a certain irony in the fact that, he's accusing the Metropolitan Police of being really, it seems as if he's trying to paint them as being through and through rotten and misogynistic and so on, but actually at the same time has essentially pushed out the first female head of the Metropolitan Police.
Oh, but she can't just have the job because she's a woman. That's not going to work out, is it? If she's not doing a good job, and on her watch all these things are happening, and he basically, it was he asked her to provide the report as to how she was going to improve things and change things, and he pretty much threw it out. Lembik.
I don't think the job's impossible. To that extent, I disagree with Emma.
Would you do it, 250 grand a year?
I wouldn't do it because I don't think I've got the skills.
But just say you, in your mind, you don't think you could?
I like the idea of the money. I don't like the idea of the responsibility.
Well, listen, I'd give it a go. You probably couldn't do a bad job as her, but what do you think?
I'm sure you'd do better than me. I'm sure Emma would do better than me.
I would love for you to be police commissioner.
I will deal with that nonsense. You want to put some racist, misogynic abuse in my watch, we'll see what happens.
You certainly scared the hell out of me, Nana, but the reality is...
Pussycat.
Yeah, so they always say in a James Bond kind of way, yes. Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
Yeah. Luke Silas Greenback, his cat, that's me.
In terms of Cressida Dick, I think that... I don't know her personally. This is one of the people I don't think I've met. I think that she's like a football team manager, where the manager gets fired because the team's not doing well, and sometimes they can't do well. You've got 11 people playing on the field. She's got 30,000 people, like Emma said, playing on the field. There are going to be some bad eggs there. I think there have been some horrendous offences in the police, but I would simply put it this way. It is the most political police job in the country. Once you get there, you're drinking from a poisoned chalice.
Do you think... look, all these people making excuses when they've got like a £250,000 job and it's not going well for her. I don't think it's fair that you should blame somebody for all the things that are going on, but there's just too many catalogue of errors. Let's take a look at the rise and fall of Dame Cressida Dick's career. So in 1983, Dick joined the Met as a constable patrolling a beat in West London. Then in 1995, she transfers to Thames Valley Police, where she spent time working as area commander for Oxford. And then in 2011, in July, she was appointed Assistant Commissioner and Head of Specialist Operations. And then in 2017, she became the first female head of the Met, completing a remarkable career comeback. So it's interesting, isn't it? She was referred in 2019 to the police watchdog over her handling of the force's investigation into allegations of child sexual abuse by members of the British establishment. Then in 2020, she faced calls to resign by Black Lives Matter activists who say that she has failed to acknowledge the racism within the force. Then in 2021, her handling of the murder of Sarah Everard by serving Met officer Wayne Couzens is heavily criticised, and later that year, the Met is described as institutionally corrupt. And this year, it emerges that a Met officer, disciplined after an inquiry into misogynistic and racist messages, has since been promoted. So did she actually have an impossible task, or was it right she stepped down? We've been asking people all around as well, and you think that her job was impossible, Lembit?
No, I don't. I think that the job is extremely difficult, but it's the most politicised police job anywhere in the country. You can do it, but I actually think there's always a time limit to it. You go up, you come down, nothing to do with her gender, but everything to do with circumstances. I think she did an OK job. But you know what? When the mayor says go, you have to go.
Well, I think, you know, look, you're going to lead. If you're going to talk about leading by example, I actually don't think she doesn't come across. I don't know her. I'm just making judgments based on the way she acts and her presence. And she doesn't appear to have any presence. I think it's an important thing. I would equate the lack of charisma to charisma bypass Keir Starmer. And
I agree with the latter.
Unfortunately, I think you need a certain energy to have some people having confidence in your leadership.
I don't know, you know, on personal terms, as we were hearing just there, you know, maybe as a boss she is a good leader. I don't know. Certainly from the outside, it doesn't seem that way. And I've been very critical of Cressida Dick. I certainly not a fan, but I do think that the accusation that the police is systemically anything rotten, I think is unfair to a lot of officers that are trying to do a really good job. At the same time, I think that we have a serious problem in this country with policing. I think that it's not just about the Metropolitan Police. We only recently saw police policing in Wales arresting a lady for putting up gender-critical stickers and then them arresting her and letting her go out on bail in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. on her mobility scooter, and allowing her to go home without her phone. I think that there are lots of things that have occurred around the country. For example, the policing of tweets rather than streets, which is a phrase that we often hear.
I'd like to see them doing both, actually.
And I think that, you know, police are suffering with a serious crisis of confidence among the population, because it seems as if the police, firstly, are not doing the jobs that they're supposed to do and are doing lots of things that they ought not to be doing.
Well, we'll come back to that, but I'm asking you at home, is Dame Cressida Dick's job an impossible one? And we've been asking people in London as well what they think.
I think it's a shame. I think she's the best thing that has happened to the Metropolitan Police, and I don't think that she should have stepped down in the first place. She's not responsible for the raw cops. Those were always there before she came, and I think it's another thing about men and their ego being massaged. So I think they were very upset that woman was ruling them, and they did everything they could to pull her down.
No, I don't think she had an impossible task. That's the job when you're at the top. And I think her time was overdue to go, to be honest. You know, she's served the force well for a long time, but she has failed to make the changes necessary.
I work with vulnerable young people on a day-to-day basis, and they're terrified of the police. They've had awful experiences, some of them, and some of them just, you know, it's just the way they look. Just the police have this aura of authority, of strength, of power, and that can be a really frightening thing for some people. We need to kind of change the way that the police look, change what the police are there for, and it should be about serving and protecting.
In terms of an impossible task, it depends where her heart is, whether it's a legacy she wants and she wants to make a difference,
or whether she's just found herself in that position and she feels like she's got to do the right things to appease the majority of people. And that's what I see it as. She's just done the right things to please the majority that she needs to please to stay in power for as long as she can.
Oh, well, what do you think? Is her job an impossible task? I'm joined by Lembit Opik and also Emma Webb.
It is a really difficult job. I wouldn't want to be a police officer. I'm happy to pay tax to other people do it. My personal experience, and it's a sample of one, I used to live right in the middle of London in Lambeth. And on the whole, I thought that the police were so patient and they were trying to keep us safe. There are always going to be some bad eggs in any situation. The overwhelming majority of police, in my view, are actually there for the right reasons, and they're doing a job I wouldn't want to do. They are threatened with violence, abuse, disrespect.
Yeah, but they would have known that when they got the job.
Yeah, maybe so, but it's still a big...
But that's, I mean, like, look, that comes with the territory. They know that if you're going to be a police officer, you're going to face violence, abuse, and all the sort of things that you would expect from a police officer. So, I don't, that's not unusual. But I think... From your perspective as a white male, and I don't, I'm not somebody who hangs on and says, oh, because I'm black, but you have seen the difference in behaviour that many people in ethnic minorities have faced. And that gentleman did say that a lot of the young people are terrified of the police because of the whole sort of...
As an MP, I have to say that I did deal with incidents of racism with the police. I can't deny that. But it was a minority, and the truth is, I'll say this here on GB News, there were a few individuals who I knew in the police were racist.
Well, you see, that's
I didn't get
those people, and I'm sure lots of people know about those people, and I think it's unfair to say that it's institutionally racism because it absolves responsibility from the individuals who are actually racist.
Right. And the police, the head of the police in that particular division probably didn't deal with it.
No, should have done something.
Should have, maybe, but, I wouldn't have said that person should resign. Cressida Dick's gone, I think, because of the behaviour of a few small, terrible individuals.
Emma, briefly.
I think, of course, there are bad apples within every walk of life, and when you're in the police force, you can be a bad apple with an awful lot of power, and there will be people like that. But, going back to the Sarah Everard case, I think at the time a lot of people wanted to say that because of that case it meant that the police were systemically misogynistic, and I think it's really unfair to tar all police officers with the brush of a minority of people who are behaving very badly.
Well, unfortunately, if the leadership acknowledge these people and don't do anything about them, then that's unfortunately what happens. Well, today I'm asking, is Dame Cressida Dick's job an impossible task? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Doug says, I feel bad for her. She's just being used as a political football. The job is too politicised. I'd actually agree with that. I think there's a very good point there, because the next person will get the same old nonsense. Eden says it's made impossible with all the PC and woke policing that our law enforcement are forced into nowadays. Some of them wearing rainbow laces, taking the knee. If you're a police officer, you don't go on any side of the fence at all. You stay neutral. Your job is to police. Stanley says, what we need is a real old school copper, one who'll take the no rubbish off anyone. Anne says that she had to go. There were just too many scandals. It was one after another. She suffered worse press than Boris Johnson, and that's saying something. I love that. Peter says it is a hard job, and she was held accountable for things she didn't really have control over. However, she is the figurehead of the Met, and the buck stops with her. Keep those thoughts coming. We'd love to hear your view. You know what to do. But if you've just joined us, where have you been? It's coming up to 9 minutes to 6 o'clock on the way. Michelle Dewberry with Jubes and Co. But now it's time for our quick-fire debates, and that's the part of the show where we discuss some of the other things making the headlines today. I've got my trusty buzzer. No. And when I press it, the panel must... And we move on. I didn't say anything that's in your mind. I'm joined today by political commentator Emma Webb and former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Right, first, a huge blow for local library services. The number of in-person visits to public libraries fell by 159 million people last year. The number of books borrowed also fell by over 50% to 72.9 million. Emma, when was the last time you visited a library?
The last time I physically visited a library was just before Christmas. But I used...
This Christmas?
Yes, but a lot of my work involves research, so I use a lot of library online resources. I'm not sure if that counts. I'm virtually there.
She's like a boring library person.
I am a boring library
smell of those, you know, the smell of papers.
Love it.
Like the smell of the
Love it. Love
I
it.
live in a library if I could.
It was 6 weeks ago for me. It was in Oasis, which is a church which actually absorbed the library in Lambeth because it was going to get shut down. I love the smell of libraries in the morning.
Bookworms. Can't deal with that. Right, the dating app, Tinder. Anybody been on a dating app? I remember I went out with somebody on an app years and years ago before it was big business, but the dating app Tinder has introduced a blind date feature to boost its popularity among young people, enabling them to meet partners in a way that closely resembles the pre-smartphone era. The new feature matches people based on preferences and enables them to make conversation before they're allowed to view each other's photos. It will be shortly available in America before expanding globally. So, Lembit, have you ever been on a blind date?
Yes, for
Really?
a TV show, though.
I went on a blind date as well, you know.
It wasn't you, was it?
No, I didn't go. You would know by now.
I know. Oh, there we go.
No, actually, go on. What TV show is it?
Oh, it's too late now. You press the button.
No, I can unpress.
It was well, okay. You can unpress. It was actually for a. No, it was a newspaper, and it was great fun. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was reminiscing. Sorry.
I've never been on a blind date, but I think it's a good idea because I do think that the kind of objectification of the app swiping basically.
I think yes.
Here.
Well, I
Dead
went on
right.
a blind date. I was the picker, and I went on the Eastern Oriental Express. I met Cilla Black, and my date was full of hot air. He was the gas man from Birmingham. If you're watching, according to French sources, next one, President Macron was refused permission to approach President Putin during talks over Ukraine after turning down a PCR test, and as a result, they had their first meeting at opposite ends of a comically massive table. Look at that. The source said that Macron was afraid the test would enable Russian intelligence, though, to services to obtain and exploit his DNA. So, Lembit and Emma, would you take Vladimir Putin's PCR test?
Yes, I would. I went to Moscow last month.
Thank you. Emma?
Oh, I wouldn't, especially not if I was a world leader. Though looking at that table, I'm wondering if they had to use the cannons.
I want them to clone me.
You've
Clone
the
me.
principle of this. When I do this, listen, on today's
Sorry.
show, we've been asking, should the UK fund France's response to the migrant crisis? And according to our Twitter poll, 6% of you said yes, and a huge 94% of you said no, which actually, to be honest, is no surprises. I'm going to say thank you so much to my panel, Lembit Opik, and also Emma Webb for joining me today. And a huge thank you at home to you for your company this afternoon. I'll be back tomorrow at 4. Make sure you join me. I'll leave you with the weather. Up next, it's Tubes & Co.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGiven. Dry for much of the time in the southeast during the next 24 hours, but turning wetter and windier elsewhere. However, as that wet and windy weather arrives, it brings with it milder air. Cold air is ahead of these weather fronts as they push into parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland during the evening. And as a result, well, on the forward band of the rain, there'll be some snow for a time above 300 or 400 metres across Scotland and northern England, but it doesn't last. The winds pick up from the southwest, coastal gales for western Scotland, and milder air pushing in. So eventually most of this stuff is rain. It pushes into northern England, West Wales by the end of the night. Drier ahead of it, a touch of frost possible in East Anglia, the southeast, but eventually temperatures lift through the night as the winds pick up. It's a bright start for parts of the Midlands, East Anglia, southern England first thing, and skies brighten through the morning for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Blustery showers push in here, but also some sunny spells. It's in between where we've got some heavy and persistent rain. Northern England, eventually the Midlands, Wales, and then by the end of the day, Cornwall as well as Devon. Temperatures aren't up to much either, 8, 9, 10 Celsius, but not feeling very pleasant where we've got the wind and the rain. Now into Saturday night, the rain tends to sink south. By this stage, it's lighter and patchier, but during the early hours of Sunday, the next batch of wet and windy weather starts to arrive into southwest England as well as Wales. Drier to the east and to the north, some clear spells for central and northern Scotland, a few showers here. But Sunday, really, for the vast majority, soon turns wet and windy. From the west, bands of rain and wind sweep through, coastal gales for the south coast of England, and the most heavy and persistent rain affecting Wales. And really through the course of Saturday and Sunday, because of the accumulated rain, we could see some issues here. Monday is also very changeable, with spells of rain or showers moving south, likewise on Tuesday.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co, the show where we'll get into